Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, well, we've got a huge task ahead, tracing the genetics, the culture, really the whole story of probably the most famous color in breeding, the purple lineage. Our goal here is to kind of cut through the noise and map the journey from those ancient land races right up to the grapey, desserty strains you see everywhere now.
And huge is definitely the word. I mean, when you dig into the source material, the sheer scale is kind of mind-blowing. This isn't some flash in the pan. We're talking about, what, 4 decades, 40 years of breeders working on this. The data points to over 1,200 documented hybrids based on purple genetics. It's this look, this aesthetic that just keeps going.
1,200, wow. That's incredible staying power, incredible volume, just for a color.
Okay.
But let's start with the basics before we jump into the history. What actually makes them purple? Is it just cold weather, like some people say, or is it deeper?
Well, yeah, the cold weather thing comes up a lot. But the real key, the genetic foundation, is anthocyanins.
Anthocyanins, okay.
Right. They're pigments, water-soluble pigments. And the cold weather does play a role. You're right there. Cooler temperatures, they basically slow down chlorophyll production. So the green fades and you see the underlying purple or red from the anthocyanins more clearly. But, and this is the crucial part, the plant has to have the genetic ability to make those anthocyanins in the first place. You can't just, stick any old plant in the cold and expect it to turn purple.
Ah, okay. So the genes have to be there. The cold just reveals it. So the hunt for purple is really a hunt for that anthocyanin gene. Where did that come from? Where are the roots?
For that, you got to go way back to the heartland of the indica family. We're talking the land races from the Hindu Kush mountains, the Afghan region. That's the source.
Okay, the very beginning of the color.
Yeah, specifically for that color expression, the sources point directly to strains like Pakistan Chitral, Kush PCK, and Purple Afghani. But what's really interesting and important for their later success is they brought more than just the color. The Hindu Kush and Afghan indica lines, they were absolutely fundamental for giving us that structure people wanted. The really dense resin, the shorter, stockier plants, and that heavy, often really sedative effect we associate with classic indicas.
So the mountains gave us both things, the purple genes and that dense structure.
Okay, that sounds like the perfect setup for the first real wave of breeding work, which the sources say was mainly, Dutch and Afghan breeders in the 70s and 80s.
Exactly. And back then, these early projects, they weren't really chasing super high indoor potency yet. The main goal was selecting plants that could handle tough outdoor conditions. They needed reliable crops, stuff that would finish flowering early and, crucially, show off that nice, deep purple color, even in the cool, maybe damp weather you get in northern Europe or mountain areas. Right, practical concerns first. Can you give us some examples of those early outdoor purple warriors?
Sure. Think about Purple Number 1 from Dutch Passion. That one was specifically bred for cold climates. You also had early hybrids like Purple Maroc, Frisian Dew. They really set the pattern. Something reliable, finishes fast, and gives you that purple look without needing a fancy setup.
That makes total sense for growers back then, working outdoors globally. But then the story takes a big turn when these genetics land on the U.S. West Coast, right?
Yeah.
So if the Dutch focused on adaptation, where did the refinement, the focus on flavor and indoor power really start?
That's exactly where California and Nevada step into the picture. And the shift was, it was pretty revolutionary because the focus changed completely. It went from, can this survive outside, to how absolutely amazing can we make this indoors? Maximum potency, density, and that visual wow factor.
Okay, so what was the big one? The strain that really defined that indoor indica standard during this phase?
Oh, that was definitely Purple Kush. Late 90s, it just became the benchmark. It was a cross of those two powerhouses we mentioned, Hindu Kush and Purple Afghani. And it just worked. It reliably delivered that deep purple color indoors, plus that really heavy, potent structure from its Afghan roots.
And Purple Kush quickly led to other popular versions, like that famous Las Vegas one.
Precisely. You started seeing regional stars pop up, like Las Vegas Purple Kush or LVPK, super popular, known for being incredibly strong and having those really dense buds. And then, as medical cannabis started taking off, breeders got more intentional. They started crossing Purple Kush genetics into things like Purple Diesel, aiming for maybe a bit more energy, or Purple Romulan, leaning into those heavy sedative effects. This whole period really cemented the structure and the indoor performance of the modern purple family.
Okay, this is where it gets really good, I think. The emergence of the Northern California legends, the emerald triangle icons. This feels like where the purple look starts getting tied to that distinct grape flavor profile, right?
Yes, now we're heading straight into the Emerald Triangle, Mendocino County specifically. And the key player to know here is Mendocino Purps. People often just called it the Purps. It showed up in the 1990s, and it was this brilliant mix. It kept that heavy structure and the color, but blended it with more modern flavors and, crucially, higher potency.
So what made the Mendo Purps family stand out? Was it just better color, or did it really shift the taste and smell?
Oh, it was a major flavor shift. Mendo Purps really helped move things away from just those earthy, hashy notes of the original Afghan parents. It opened the door to much fruitier, sweeter profiles. It's the ancestor of diverse strains like Purple Trainwreck and the really important Grape Ape. Grape Ape was Mendo Purps crossed with skunk and Afghani.
Adding skunk in there, that must have really amped up the aroma.
Totally. The sources really emphasize that Grape Ape was a key stepping stone towards those definitive grape-tasting strains that came later. Things like Punch Breath, even stuff like Obama Kush. This Mendo lineage proved you could have that stunning purple look and a complex, almost dessert-like flavor.
And Mendo Purps also gave rise to, or is related to, maybe one of the most globally recognized purple names ever, Purple Urkle.
That's the one, Purple Urkle, an absolute icon. It's a clone that started making waves in Northern California in the early 2000s. Its exact backstory is still debated, one of those cannabis mysteries. But many link it directly back to Mendocino Purps, maybe a standout phenotype. Whatever its precise origin, what mattered was its profile. That deep, rich, almost like syrupy grape flavor, that became the foundation for what came next.
And that specific profile, that Urkle profile, that's what led to the market just being dominated in the early 2000s by Urkle and its descendants, especially GDP. That was the real purple explosion.
Absolutely. It was a dynasty moment. Urkle brought the signature color and that super desirable flavor. And then Cannabis skillfully combined those elements to create Granddaddy Purple GDP back in 2003.
Okay, let's break down that GDP recipe because it was so influential, right? Kicked off hundreds of other strains.
Yeah, the specific cross for GDP was Purple Urkle crossed with Salmon Creek Big Bud. And this mix was just dynamite. You got the incredible look and taste from Urkle, but then you added the absolutely massive yields and huge flower size from Big Bud. GDP just took over. It became the purple strain known everywhere for those super dense, dark violet buds that just reeked of grape.
It sounds like GDP cracked the code for commercial growers. Massive yields, high potency, and that killer bag appeal from the color.
Exactly right. It was the whole package, and it totally reset what consumers expected overnight. And once that standard, that look, that grape flavor was set, things just exploded. Breeders started mixing those purple genetics into all sorts of complex new flavor profiles. You saw the impact right away with strains like Cherry Pie, which was GDP crossed with Durban Poison, that energetic African landrace, created something really unique.
And this GDP line also gave us the building blocks for the whole punch phenomenon later on, didn't it?
Yes, exactly. The super popular Purple Punch, that's Larry OG, crossed with GDP, came directly from this lineage. It carried that purple grape aesthetic forward into what people now call the dessert generation of strains. You still find descendants like Candyland, which is GDP and Platinum Cookies, around today.
The sheer number is still kind of hard to grasp. You said earlier 1,200 hybrids in total, but GDP alone accounts for a massive portion of that.
It really does. It's the patriarch of the dynasty. And yeah, that number's worth saying again. GDP itself is listed as the parent of over 400 documented descendant strains. That just shows you the incredible commercial pull and genetic influence of that original Urkle X Big Bud cross. It really did standardize that grape look and smell globally.
Okay, let's shift focus from California for a sec. While GDP was blowing up there, what were breeders in Europe and other places doing with purple strains during the 2000s? Was it the same focus?
Not quite the same, no. Their focus often stayed a bit different. They were frequently prioritizing things like adaptation to different climates, overall structural stability, and sometimes more complex profiles suited for ash making. Remember, they might not have had the same level of indoor resources, so having stable, reliable plants was often more critical.
Can you name a couple of examples of those European-led developments?
Sure. You had strains like Lavender, that one was a real mix. Super Skunk, Big Skunk Korean, Afghani Hawaiian, became really popular on the continent, partly because it looked great, but was also just a solid, sturdy plant. And breeders kept working on stabilizing these lines, maybe for hash production or just general robustness. That gave us lines like Peyote Purple from Cannabis.
So Europe was maybe more focused on stability and structure, while California was chasing potency and those really specific flavor profiles.
Generally speaking, yeah. And that European work was actually really important for keeping the genetics versatile and adaptable worldwide. It even helped move purple into the auto-flowering market, which became huge internationally. Strains like Violeta, that's a cross of Malawi, an African landrace, and PCK kept the purple lineage going in a form that could grow almost anywhere, reliably.
Okay, let's bring it back to the modern era, the defining period now, the Purple Punch era, roughly the 2010s up to today.
This strain seems like it took the GDP magic and gave it a fresh coat of paint, so to speak.
Yeah, Purple Punch was like Purple 2.0. That cross Larry OG X GDP, it brought back those super sweet grape and berry flavors, but
Hmm.
maybe even louder, combined with incredible bud density. And crucially, Purple Punch just redefined bag appeal for a whole new generation. It became a benchmark flavor people looked for.
So what purple punch crosses are really dominating or defining the market right now? Oh, they're everywhere. You absolutely have to know Slurricane. That's Do-si-dos crossed with purple punch, hugely successful. Then there's banana punch, which is banana OG and punch. But maybe the biggest trend is how breeders have strategically mixed these purple punch lines with the newest hot profiles like Skittles and Gelato. That's how we got strains like Grape Gas or Purple Skittles. It shows they're constantly using that reliable purple visual as a base to showcase the latest, most complex flavors.
It's amazing proof that the look itself still has massive value, even after all these decades. Okay, before we wrap this history up, we should probably touch on those couple of confusing bits. The strains where the history or genetics get a bit hazy.
Right, yeah, the messy bits you always find when you're trying to track 40 years of breeding. We definitely need to mention Purple Haze. Culturally, it's probably one of the most famous purple names ever, often linked to Haze X purple tie. But honestly, the actual lineage is super murky. The purple haze seeds you can buy today, they often seem quite different from whatever flower got that name back in the 70s and became associated with, psychedelic lavender buds. It's a classic case where the legend outpaced the documented genetics.
And while we focused a lot on that heavy grapey profile coming from the Urkle GDP line, it's worth noting that the purple color can be paired with totally different flavors too, right?
That's a really good point. It reminds you that the color gene isn't necessarily hardwired to one specific smell or taste. West Coast breeders, for example, have successfully put that purple trait into strains with bright, tropical, citrusy terpenes. Look at Purple Tangy. It's a great example. You get the beautiful purple coloration, but the dominant profile is bright orange and citrus, not grape or musk. The color becomes like an extra visual bonus, not the defining flavor characteristic.
Okay, so let's zoom out. 40 years of history here. We started way back with land races in the Hindu Kush, dragged through European outdoor breeding, hit that massive California indoor boom with Kush and GDP, and now we're in this era of purple punch meeting dessert and Skittles terps. What does this whole journey really tell us about breeding?
Well, I think it shows this incredibly persistent, almost unbreakable focus. Breeders locked onto a visual trait, those anthocyanins from ancient land races, and then spent decades methodically linking that look to flavors and effects that people really want. First the structure, then the grape, now the complex desserts and fruits. It's this constant cycle, a really successful feedback loop between the genetics, the breeder's skill, and what consumers are asking for.
And as the sources show, breeders are still actively mixing purple genetics into the very latest height strains, it leaves us with a really interesting question for you, the listener, to think about after this. Is this ongoing quest for the perfect purple just a permanent part of breeding now, always chasing that visual appeal? Or is the power of purple mostly tied to, the strong cultural memory and brand recognition built up over decades by those iconic strains like Urkel and GDP? Something to chew on.